We are going to talk about form field validation using JavaScript. And I have the Nautilus Travel Job Description Validation form open. And this is a form that has a lot of different text fields within it. It has 2 radio buttons for yes and no, and a drop-down menu. The other piece it has is at the bottom. There are 2 signature fields and 4 open text areas. Now, one of the things you want to do when looking at this form as a form designer is determining if you really want all of these fields to be big open text fields, because that allows the user to put in any information they want, and it might not even be related to the content you want. So you have to consider how a user would enter their information, and specifically what information might they enter. So things like this regarding location, if there are preset locations, it's a good idea to do it this way. Otherwise, people may end up writing in San Francisco or New York in a variety of ways. They may also try and add the state, because we get used to typing out addresses that require a comma and the state. So keep those things in mind when you're determining what fields should go into the form. What Acrobat did when I created a form is made these text fields, because to Acrobat it made sense. But for me, when I get the data back from the user, I want to try and limit the user in what they can put into the form. Now, it's easy to pop up a message for the user. And one of the other things you want to consider is where should you do that? So let's say we have a job title here, and the user is in this field. When the user is in this field, you can use the onFocus event to do something. So if they're off the field as they put their cursor in, it's a focus event, and as I click out of it, it's a blur event. So you have to think about the event in the form you want to trigger something. Now, let's say I want to pass a message into the user when they are about to fill out this job category form field. There are a couple of ways I can do it. First of all, I could put an on-click event for the text field. I could also, since this is a form, have the focus when the user puts their cursor in it, or the blur when they move out of it. Use those events. And sometimes there's a very subtle difference between which ones you use. So let's take a look at working with an alert, a pop-up message for the user. And what I want to do is I want to give them some information about this form field and the information that's going to go in it when they go to type out what they're going to add. I'll put it that way. So as far as this piece is concerned, we want to get into the properties. So I'll use the select object, double click this particular field, and I can get into the format piece, which we've looked at previously. Notice there's also a validate. And this validate tab is specifically for checking the information within the form. And what this validate does is prevent the form from actually being submitted to wherever it's going to go if it doesn't pass a validation. We technically don't need to validate, or I'm not going to do that right now. What I want is an action. I'm just going to run JavaScript to pop up a message. I'm not testing what they put into the form. So I'm going to use the mouse up event and move out to the run a JavaScript. So there are different locations for doing different things as well within Acrobat. So I'll add run a JavaScript. And I'm going to move into here and say app.alert. So that's how I can pop up a message to the user. However, did I double check what event or what is triggering it? So let me cancel out of that. And this is a mouse up. What I want to do, instead of when they click the mouse, I want this to exactly happen when the cursor goes into the field. So I'll go ahead and do that. Actually, yeah, let's do on focus, add, and here is our alert app dot alert parentheses semicolon. And inside here, I can put my message for the user for that field. And I'll say, please use the name of the company department for this field. Okay, so there's my alert. I'll click OK. Right now, I have that running on an on-focus event within this field. So I'll close it up. Go back to the hand, and if I'm in job title and tab into job category, notice you can't see my cursor right now. This pops up before my cursor goes into the field. So I'll click OK. There's my cursor. Let me modify this. I'll double click it. This time, instead of an on focus, what I'm going to do is a mouse up. But let me copy it so you don't have to watch me typing it out again. And I'm going to do a mouse up instead. So I'll paste it in here. There's my alert. I'll remove the mouse up. Otherwise, it would be doing both at the same time. And I'll close. Now let's go back to the hand. And I'm going to click inside the field. Now, this is an on focus, and it looks very similar. Notice I can't see my cursor. I'll click OK. When I'm done, the cursor goes inside that field. So for that particular form field, to a user, it really doesn't make any difference whether we use the mouse up as a click event or whether it's on focus when the cursor moves into the field. They're both almost identical. But the other thing I could do is consider what if I wanted to pop up that message as they moved out of this field to go into that one. So instead of putting it directly inside the field, the way I have it now, what I could do instead is move over to this field, and as I move from this one into here, I could pop up the message. So this time I'm going to add the event to this form field. So I'll add, and let me not do mouse up, I'm going to do on blur. So the assumption is the users in this field, they're going to click out to move to the next field, and as soon as they click out, the message pops up. So I'll click add. Here is my script. Click OK. And now I'm going to go out to the hand, and I'll put my cursor in here. And let's say, let me move that for you. Assistant. I hit a tab, and now this message pops up. So this is the on blur from the job title. I'll click OK. This is the mouse up. Actually, I think I have it now set up on focus. This is an alert. So you can see the one moving out of this field happens before the one for this field happens, which makes total sense. Let me double check and just make sure which event, and this one is on focus. So I have the same event when I move out of this field as I do when I move into this one. And that's not a good plan for the user, obviously, because they'll get two alerts. But those are things that you have to think about when you're going to plan your form validation. What form field should I use? And my concern with using job title, it sounds like a great idea, but if the user grabs their mouth and decides to do this field first, there is no on blur because they haven't entered the one before. So it's usually safer to put the event into that field on an on focus, or in this example, a mouse up, because they're basically the same, instead of doing it as I move from one field to the next. If I'm tabbing through the fields, it's a perfect solution. But if I'm using my mouse to click inside a field, it's not. So that's a brief overview of a few of the things you want to think about. Make sure you plan your form field validation and not only figure out the event and the coding, but also take a look at the different options you have for placing your scripts and make sure that you place it in the correct location to get the results you want. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to delete the JavaScript from the job title event, and I'll also clean up this form by deleting the assistant. So I now have a nice clean form and I'll save that one. But that is an overview of form field validation and some of the things you need to plan for before you start actually coding your validation scripts.